Today we're working with a piece of film that we're going to be putting on a window that measures 54.5 inches by 18.25. That's the glass opening. So we've cut the sheet down a 1/4 inch on both dimensions. So the sheet is cut to 54.25 inches by 18 inches. Since we're going to want the connections for this particular piece of film on the bottom, we're going to go ahead and make some marks. So the bottom of the piece of film is 18 inches. 9 inches is going to mark the center point. We're going to go ahead and mark a 1/2 inch to the right and a 1/2 inch to the left, leaving an inch gap between our cuts. To make this cut, we're going to be using the cutting tool. This blade is meant to cut right to left. There's a bevel on one side of the blade, the other side is flat. This long straight part on the bottom is going to be used to press against the bottom of the film so that we get a straight cut across the top. To do this cut, we need to get the blade in between the layers of film. To help you with this, you can bend the corner a little bit and it'll get a little bit gray or more white. That's the two pieces of film separating. It's going to make it easier to slip your blade in between. You want to make sure you're in between the two hard pieces of film, not just behind a protective layer. Once it's in, keeping that flat edge pressed against the film, we'll start our cut to the first mark that we made. Once we get to that spot, we'll turn the blade and bring it down off the bottom and remove that top layer that we cut. Now that we've made the first cut, we need to make the second cut, but that needs to be on the opposite side of the film. So we'll roll the film over, making sure not to kink it, and we're going to repeat the process up to the second mark. So we'll bend the corner a little bit, get those two pieces of film started to separate, and then we're going to slide the blade in there. Again, between the two hard pieces, not just behind the protective layer. Push against the bottom and start our cut. When we reach the mark, angle the blade down and remove that piece. Now that we've got the cut made, we're going to clean the surface with some isopropyl alcohol. We're going to use a lint-free cloth to do it. You don't need a ton. We're just wanting to clear any contaminants that are there. And all we need to do is make a quick swipe here. We don't want to rub and remove the crystals that are exposed. We just want to make one swipe over it and make sure we let it dry. It dries pretty quick. Now that it's dry, we're going to take the silver paste, and we only want a thin line spread on here, and we'll move it around with a little brush. But the important thing to remember here is we do not want the silver paste to contact that cut edge. And if you do make contact, you can wipe it away with the cloth and some alcohol to make sure that we're not letting the electrical connection contact there before it travels to the other side. So I'm going to just put a thin line. Now that's on there. We'll take a small 1/4 inch brush and we're just going to spread it around. And this is what the copper tape is going to be adhered to. Again, making sure we don't touch the cut edge of the film. Now that we have it on there, this silver paste will take quite a while to dry on its own. So we're going to grab a heat gun and we're going to speed up the process. Should take about 20-30 seconds. So now we have our heat gun, and before I dry this off, I'm going to take a different sheet just to show you some things. So before I dry the silver paste that we just applied, I'm going to go ahead and show you something on a scrap piece of film about the heat gun. If heat's applied to the film for too long, you're going to see the film start to go clear. This doesn't mean that the piece is ruined, but you do want it to cool off and go back to its opaque state before continuing to dry that area. And that you're holding the heat gun in the same position too long, or you have the heat too high. But I'll go ahead and show you. So that clear spot is something that we want to avoid. It's not necessarily damaging the film, depending on the extent and the time you left the heat on that space, but we do want to avoid that. All right, now that I showed you how to ruin the film, we're gonna go ahead and dry this. And a good thing to look at is the sheen on the silver paste. As you apply the heat, you'll see it change. That means that's drying up. Once I think the silver paste is dry, you can run your finger across it, make sure that there's no silver paste coming off. That means it's dry. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to apply the copper tape. Since the cut we're working on has this glossy finish to it, the other side of the film has more of a satin finish. This glossy side of the film is going to be the side that goes against the glass. The adhesive is behind this glossy layer. So when we cut out our copper tape, we want to make it double. So this will go to the end, but we don't want to make a soldering connection up against the glass. So this tape, we're going to wrap around the edge to the front of the film. So I'm going to make it double because we're not sure if the electrical connections are going to go straight down or exit to the side of the frame. But to be safe, and there's no harm in bringing it all the way to the end of the cut on the other side. So now I got my copper tape cut. I'm going to apply it along the bottom edge of the film. And this is the same as the silver paste. We do not want to be touching the copper tape to that cut edge. So lay it on. And just keep it right along the bottom. And press down. Make sure you're getting good contact. We go to the edge of the film. And as I previously mentioned, we're going to bring it around the front so that we're not making a soldering connection up against the glass. Flip the film over to the satin side. There's a protective layer on here, so we don't want to put the copper tape over that. We're going to peel it up just enough to expose that copper that's on the back. And we're going to lay the rest of the film, or the rest of the tape, right along the edge, same way we did the other side. Well, that's done. And we're going to repeat the process for the other cut, but this one doesn't have to wrap around to the back. This one will just go over the front, and we'll cut it at the edge. So we've cleaned it with alcohol already, and now we're going to add our silver paste. Take the brush and repeat the process. If you do plug your film in and it doesn't want to turn on, checking to make sure that the copper tape and silver paste aren't touching that upper edge is a good way to troubleshoot that problem. Then we'll take the heat gun, dry it out, and apply the copper tape. Make sure it's dry. And then we'll cut one more piece I'll cut it a little bit long and just trim the end. Then we're good to apply the film to the window. I like to apply it without the water soldered to it. It seems to remove a little bit of stress. So now that we have our copper tape applied to the film, we're going to leave this satin protective layer on until after it's applied to the window. The glossy part will be removed, which reveals the adhesive. I leave this on until after the soldering connections are done, just to protect the film during the installation process. So now that we have the film ready, before we put it on the window, I'm going to go ahead and test it. I've hooked up some alligator clips to my power controller. I'm just going to place them onto the copper bars, one to each. And the film worked properly. It's not all that clear right now, just because we still have the satin protective layer that I've taped back here, so I didn't clip it in the alligator clip. But now we know it's working, and we're good to put it on the glass.